All right. So, welcome everybody to the first meeting of the academic year for our UConn chapter of the Ecology, Education, Diversity, and Sustainability program, which is part of the Parent Seeds program through the Ecological Society of America. So, my name is Dr. Sarah Canuti. Yes, you pronounced the K. And I am the faculty advisor of the UConn Seeds chapter. And so thanks again for joining us. And first we will hear about opportunities through the Parent Seeds program from Esberry Cordova Ortiz, as well as Fred Abbott. And so thank you for joining us at UConn. We really appreciate it. And then the second part of the presentation, or the Zoom meeting, is a presentation by our EEB grad student, Jessica Gutierrez, and she will be demystifying the process of applying to grad school. So please try to stay for the whole hour, but if you miss any part or have to leave for work or whatever, that's totally fine. I will be recording all of this, so you will be able to check in later. We'll send out the link later. So Esberry, do you want to go ahead and take the floor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so hi everyone. Like Sarah said, my name is Esberry Cordova Ortiz. I am the Diversity Programs Assistant here at Seeds at ESA. And also joining us is Fred Abbott. He's my boss, the Diversity Programs Manager. So this position, I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself, kind of how I came to this position, and what's going to be changing with Seeds, and give you guys a little bit of background on like the opportunities that we have and how you guys can get involved, and what we have planned for all of our chapters throughout this, at least this fall and into the spring semester as well. So I am a recent graduate of the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I studied ecology and conservation, and I came to know Seeds my freshman year. I joined the IUP chapter, and I became event coordinator, and then I was president of my chapter at IUP. How I became more involved with just nationally, in 2018, I applied for the Seeds Spur Fellowship, which I will tell you guys a little bit more about as well. But I got that opportunity in 2018 in summer to do research at WK Kellogg Biological Station at Michigan State University. And through that opportunity, I was able to participate in leadership meetings through Seeds and a national field trip, as well, funded through Seeds, which is opportunities you all can look into and be involved with. And then I got to present that research that I presented at the Ecological Society of America's annual meeting in 2019. So that was kind of a year fellowship all through Seeds, and that's kind of how I got involved with the program and got to know Fred, and kind of how I came to this position as well. So as Diversity Programs Assistant, my job will be basically to talk to the chapters. We have historically over 110 chapters across the nation. Not all of them are active at the same time, but it's a pretty expansive network, and we haven't really been able to kind of connect with everybody. So that's kind of my job, will be to reach out to everybody and connect to one another and within the chapters as well, regionally as well as nationally. And just manage a bunch of activities. So now that Seeds is fully virtual, is at least the semester, hopefully next semester we can do some activities in person, but we'll be managing some workshops, including graduate workshops, for graduate school, but also careers and ecology. So you guys can look out for those. We do have a newsletter that comes out every month. That will be coming out every month. We'll announce some of that. And we do have I'm throwing a lot of information out there, so if anybody has any questions, like, stop me. I can answer anything. So we do have social media where you guys can follow us, and we keep up to date with like any like deadlines if there's any applications due, or what we're doing in terms of workshops and how you can sign up. So Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it's just like ESA Seeds for most of them, I think. Yeah. So in terms of other, like what I kind of was mentioning of my own experience with Seeds, it is kind of hard right now because of the pandemic and because everything is virtual to host a lot of these things, but I will tell you a little bit about them, especially for those of you who are like underclassmen that are coming up and want to be involved with Seeds. There are some really great opportunities. So first, the biggest thing that we have, like the most prestigious award, is the fellowship. That includes what I told you, which is a national. We bring you out to a. Let me back up. Through the fellowship, you do get to have like a research experience, like I said, through like partner institutions that we have. And that is like fully covered through Seeds. There's like no out-of-pocket pay for like anybody. Any student doesn't pay anything. And then we bring you to a leadership meeting, and that is a national leadership meeting. We fly students from all over the country, from all different chapters of Seeds, and kind of walk them through like workshops on 21st century science, and not just the science and the research, but also like issues that are presently like that are a focus in ecology and in research in general. So usually those happen in like research stations. And then there's also the field trips, the national field trips, which is similar but more focused on research. And with that, so those are like the national things. Not just fellows can apply. So for the field trip, any student can apply. And then for Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the leadership, you have to be nominated.
Yes. So for leadership meeting is intended for our fellowship students and our Seeds chapter leaders. So each chapter gets to nominate a student to attend this meeting. There are about 25 spots for each of these yearly. So it is a competitive nomination process, but no, we do not open the leadership meeting up for applications. It's the only one of our opportunities where students get to be nominated. All of our other opportunities are application based. Everything is online. We try to make it as simple as possible. I just want to say hi to everyone. My name is Fred Abbott, and I've been managing the Seeds program at the national level at the Ecological Society of America now for about 9 years. I was a Seeds student myself. I won't give you when that happened, but it's been a while. But I just wanted to say that we're very excited to have Esbury on board. This is her second meeting. I told her she'd take lead on this one. So we're very excited. She's going to be the contact person for all of our Seeds chapters, but the program is very broad. There's a lot of details to it. So there is, again, we normally don't want to turn these conversations into monologues, but there's definitely a lot of details to this program. Like Esbury is mentioning, we have two types of field trips. So we have a national field trips, we have regional field trips, we have our leadership meeting, we have the ESA annual meeting, we also have our Seeds fellowship, we have our Seeds chapters across the US. And not only that, but now this year we're supposed to offer our first Seeds graduate workshops for our graduate students, finally, after so many years. And by the way, the program has been going on for 24 years now. We're about to turn 25 next year. So there's a lot of things that have been going on. There's 6 main components of the program. So it is a lot of details. So please, if at any point you guys have any questions, understandably so, feel free to ask. You can raise your hands, you can post it in the chat, and we'll definitely address those. But I'm happy to be interacting with students. During the pandemic, I've missed my students. I haven't been able to travel, which I normally do 7 or 8 times a year with the program, and get to spend weekends with some really cool students from all over the US that are very unique in their in each and every way. They're all interested about science, but they come from all different backgrounds. The aspect of diversity is extremely important for us. It's one of the mission statements of the program. And so I'm very happy that I get to meet all of you, even though it might be virtual. Thank you for opening up your offices, your backgrounds. In this case, it's my own home. So yeah, I'm happy to meet you.
Yeah, sorry to not let you introduce yourself there. No, but yeah, I think for the most part, so that's kind of a little bit of background based on what I said and Fred said of what the SEEDS program has offered in the past. Like I said, we are virtual now, so there will be a lot of workshops, like I said, things that all students can join. We're basically, what we want to communicate to all of our chapters right now is that we're here to help. We want you to tell us what you need from us. We have money available that you guys can apply to ask for if you guys are planning something virtual or whatever it is that your campus and your chapter wants to do. We just want to support you in any way that we can. We know it's very difficult. So, and again, we're here for you, and that's kind of my position right now is to be in communication with the chapters, chapter leadership, and members. Whoever wants to reach out, that's my sole purpose. Is my job is to be here for you. So I'm happy to be here. In terms, I did mention the grants. If you guys have any plans, I don't know kind of how. I know you guys are doing virtual meetings, obviously, but if there's anything that you guys have planned for the semester, we would like to know. There's also the ESA, the SEEDS newsletter went out earlier this week, and we are asking all of our chapters to submit chapter reports. That's really important for us to kind of keep track of what everyone's doing and how we can improve the program as well. So yeah, at some point that needs to be submitted, but other than that, yeah, I don't know if I'm missing anything, Fred. I would like to stay for the rest of the meeting and provide some of my own feedback about grad school and stuff. But
awesome. Thank you, Asbury. I'm actually going to stay for this as well. I just wanted to, there's a lot of experience that have come with the position for such a long time. So if you guys don't mind, I would love to share some of those experiences and some of those tips and tricks on how to manage a career in ecology, which can be very daunting. But I just want to say that we're very excited. What Asbury was mentioning about the virtual realm for SEEDS this week, we're normally in person, events, talking to our students, sponsoring our students on these unique travel experiences to explore different ecosystems across the US with us, to learn firsthand experiences from scientists in the field, to kind of develop your own research projects on each one of these experiences. So shifting to the virtual realm has been a steep learning experience, a challenge, yet a great opportunity for us as well. So with that being said, we're talking about career development workshops throughout the semester for you guys. So for example, this is a perfect example, talking about how to apply for graduate school. But there's also things like science communication workshops and policy workshops, the implication of our science, not just our science. So how can we become better, more well-rounded scientists? Well, we're talking about writing, grant writing. And anybody that needs to do science needs to find money to do science. It's not cheap. So being able to reach out to those funders and do that in the proper fashions is extremely important. It's a skill that you develop throughout your career. So it's not, it doesn't come easy for most of us. As far as science communication, let's be honest, scientists are not the best communicators. We know how to communicate between each other. We publish our data and it's read by other scientists. But
Mostly scientists in our own field.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to talking about our science with other folks, talking about our science to non-science majors, it's a challenge and a hassle that sometimes people just don't want to take on. And I think that that is more evident now than ever in our society and the history of this country, for example. And so it's important for us to practice that. It's important for us to understand that. Not only that, but how does science make it into policy? We don't have enough scientists interested in politics. You know, how does that process take place? We're also talking about how to structure. What are your goals for your career? You should be mapping out, you know, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, you know, thinking about that big dream. What position would you like to have in the future? You know, we sell our students, or many academic institutions tell our students, you know, the perfect career path is you finish your undergraduate, then you go to a master's, then a PhD, then a postdoc, and ta-da, you're a faculty. That is not the reality for most scientists. When you talk about, you know, listening on to career panels and so forth, I can say, you know, most scientists don't. They veer off and explore other fields. They end up back in science, or they started in something else and then became a scientist. So there's no like perfect career path. There's no like, this is the path to success in science. It just do what works for you at that moment in time. And Esbury has her story. I have my story, and I've heard many, many, many stories throughout the years from a lot of prominent scientists, you know, that they didn't find themselves in such an easy spots. And I think that's more evident for you, for this group now. Your undergraduates going through a pandemic, like, you know, that's not something that I went through. It's something that we need to manage, and it's something that again, it's a challenge and an opportunity. So I just want to kudos to all of you for keeping the student organization being run outside of the campus realm. You know, like Esbury mentioned, we're here to support you. So in any case, and anything that you guys need or anything like that, Esbury also mentioned our chapter grants. It's something that we haven't done for a few years. We're lucky enough that we get to do it this year. The funding came through where we can provide, you know, support to our chapters, financial support for our chapters to develop those activities. There's one other thing that I just want to put out there on the map, besides the workshops that we'll be leading throughout the fall. And again, definitely give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. Also, definitely submit that chapter report. These chapter reports used to be collected at the end of the academic year. And that was kind of a dumb thing for me to do, I'll be honest, because I want to get to talk to the students beforehand. There's no use of me getting your contact information at the end of the academic year in May and reporting on what you did. I want to know what you're going to do and how we can support that. So we shifted those now to the beginning of the year. And that's pretty important. That's actually a pretty big step for us. So subscribing to our information and what we'll be providing. But one thing that I do want to put it on your radar, besides that we have the money to support you, is also the fact that we're actually thinking about hosting a virtual BioBlitz. So it's a stay-at-home BioBlitz for our chapters. It's also a competition for our chapters. So keep that in mind of being able to use the iNaturalist platform, creating a project for UConn Seeds chapter, where you get your team members to be able to take pictures and identify as much biodiversity as you can from home, and compete between Seeds chapters. This was actually started by 4 of our Seeds chapters in Puerto Rico, and it was actually a really interesting event. We're not competing with tropical biodiversity. We can't, especially for you guys now. UConn, you can't compete. There's not. The island is way more biodiverse than any other place in the U.S. for the most part. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. You know, we're trying to turn science in the virtual realm. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to Sarah. Thank you to Esbury for putting this together. And if there's anything that you guys ever need, feel free to reach out to us. My email is super complicated. It's fred@esa.org. Or
just sent it in the chat. Yeah.
There you go. Or you can reach us, both Esbury and myself, at seeds.esa.org. So a pleasure to meet all of you, and I'm here to help.
Thank you so much for being here and all the information that you provided. We received your newsletter, and Mahima, who is our current secretary, forwarded it on to all of the members, and that's kind of a plug for membership. So if you want to learn more about all of these amazing opportunities that were just talked about, go to, maybe Mahima, can you put the website in the chat? And sign up for our chapter, and you'll be kept up to date for everything. And actually, we will talk to you about that funding opportunity, because we will be inviting a virtual seminar speaker later this semester. So we're trying to find funding for it. So, and that's another plug. If you sign up for the chapter, you get to vote on the speaker. So please do that. I'd also like to give a shout out to the leadership for the UConn Seeds. So we have Jada, who is actually co-running the session. She is the current president. We have Mackenzie, who is the vice president, and she's not on my screen, but I'm assuming she's waving. We have Mahima, who's the current secretary. You've been hearing a lot from her, which is awesome. She's been keeping on top of all the emailing. And then we have Jamie, who is the treasurer. And so, and then of course, Jessica Gutierrez, who will be presenting today, who is the grad student representative for the chapter. So thank you all for helping put this together, and you'll be hearing more from us. So I'm going to hand everything over to Jess and mute myself, and see you at the end.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Advanced. Okay, I think it's all good. And then do I just press enter? Okay. Can everyone see that okay? It's just a slide. Okay. So, my name is Jessica Gutierrez, as mentioned earlier, and I'll be talking about applying to graduate school. Some of these resources and information is coming from my own personal experience. Some of it is coming from other people who I've talked to in the past, like Dr. Tara Stewart Miller, or Merrill, sorry. And other online resources such as Twitter. Twitter is a big thing in which to get information from. And that's where I got this other Google Drive of other resources. Okay. So we'll start with the timeline. So obviously there's always a benefit to applying or starting to think about graduate school very early. But again, you still have time if you're just starting to think about it now. So from March through June, you'll identify programs and you'll start to make a study plan for the GRE. We'll talk about the GRE later. This is only if it's required. Many institutions are getting rid of the GRE, so again, only if that's required. From June through July, you want to identify some letter writers, start initiating conversations and contact potential advisors, also known as your principal investigators. Think about the NSF GRFP, which stands for the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. And then from August through September, you kind of want to start drafting and writing this NSF GRFP. Write statements. So that includes your statement of purpose, personal statement, diversity statements, any statements that your university will ask you to submit. And then you want to make sure your CV is either just developed or you want to make edits during this time as well. And then from September to the deadline, you want to complete your online application. This is where you'll submit some unofficial transcripts. You'll complete your statements, submit it there as well, and then submit your GRFP. For ecology, October is usually the deadline for the GRFP. One thing to also consider is that it's okay to take a gap year and gain experience in your field that you want to pursue. Most graduates that I know have taken a gap year, and they're great. I've taken gap years as well. And then deadlines are usually for graduate school, are usually between like December and January. Some go a little later and some are a little earlier. So it really depends on your program. Okay, so how do you identify a program? So I like to make a little Excel sheet or a note sheet. And these factors that I have up here are in a particular ranking order. You decide what's important for you. So location. Location is important because you want to consider cost of living, local government. Is it close to your support system, such as family and friends? Will you be happy there? Is it like a rural area? Is it a city? And if you ever thought about going international, that's something you can do too. You just have to do a little more research on there. I have no experience there. Anyway, so then you want to select an institution. So there are universities that are considered high ranking, and the way that research institutions are ranked are through R tier systems. So R1 is the highest ranking, and an example of that would be UConn. But prestige isn't everything, and it's not like the end all be all, but sometimes it means that they can provide more resources for their students. So that's just something to keep in mind. Once you found an institution of interest, then you start to identify programs such as a master's program or a PhD. Master's programs can be like online, they can be strictly course-based, or you have a thesis-based master's where you complete your own research project while completing your master's program. And in ecology, a master's can generally take around 2 years, while a PhD, at least for UConn, I think the average is like 5 to 6 years. Okay, so then once you find your institution and a program, you want to consider the lab research. This is a pretty important one too. So, sorry, backtracking. So lab research and lab programs are a little different. So in ecology, you'll contact a few advisors, and we'll talk a little more in detail about that. But in other programs, like let's just say microbiology or neurobiology, you'll apply to like 6 to 8 programs, and then you'll do rotations. And then after your rotations, you'll get matched with an advisor. So again, programs are different, but in ecology, it's more common to contact like 2 to 3 advisors who you want to do research with. And then you'll apply to around 2 to 3 programs. At least that's what was common in my experience. And just to think about this as well, applications can cost anywhere from $50 to $100. So please make sure that you request any like fee waivers that you can apply to or you qualify for. Okay, so getting back to the lab research, you want to know who's your principal investigator, like what research are they doing? Does this research align with yours? And then lastly, you want to also consider the benefits. So this is absolutely important. Does your institution provide healthcare, insurance, tuition waivers? Do they give you stipends? Generally, all of these benefits are given to PhD students, but master students do not always have stipends or tuitions. It really depends on your program. And another thing to consider is personal benefits. Why do you want to go to grad school? What are your goals after graduate school? And will this program get you there? If you don't really know what that is right now, I would also consider like Googling your quote unquote like dream career. And then does that require a PhD? Does that require a graduate degree? So just some things to consider. Okay, so the GRE, it's not always required. It is the general record exam. It's an entry standardized exam with 3 parts. It's verbal, quantitative, and writing. Honestly, this is more of a barrier to higher education than it is a reflection of the applicant. And this is exactly why most institutions are getting rid of the GRE and no longer have it as a requirement. But some institutions may still have it, some departments may still require it, so it's still important to talk about. This exam is expensive, unfortunately. It can cost around $200. But there are some free tutorials to help you study on YouTube. The GRE also offers some practice exams. I personally used a program called Magoosh, and I split that subscription with a friend just to like help with costs. But again, these things are expensive, and I would also recommend that you give yourself at least a month or two in advance to study, because it's really expensive to take this exam multiple times. But again, most institutions are getting rid of it, so hopefully your program no longer requires it. Okay, so now we're talking about the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. So it's a 3-year funding program for a 5-year STEM graduate program. So it gives you $34,000 for research, and then it gives you $12,000 for any kind of institutional fees. So the application looks like a 2-page research proposal where they'll judge you on your intellectual merit, cutting edge new research ideas, and broader impacts. So how can you apply your research to either the general public, conservation, things like that. And then you'll have a 3-page personal statement, and then they also require 3 letters of recommendation. For more information, you can look at these websites and like the NSF, grfp.org. There's also a match program. So if you are like, this is really crazy and overwhelming, you can match with a mentor, and that's someone who will coach you through the NSF GRFP application process. These mentors are usually someone who either A, received the GRFP, or they have served on the panel, usually both. So they really know this application and they know how to be successful when applying. Okay, so now you've identified your programs, and now you want to contact prospective advisors. So you want to review their lab website if they have one. You want to read like 1 to 2 recent publications so you know what to talk to your advisors about. And then you want to give like a short introduction. You want to mention your research interests and why you're interested in the lab. Maybe you already have some project directions that you want to discuss, or some research questions that you really want to answer while you're in graduate school. And then you'll provide something like your CV, a cover letter, sometimes unofficial transcripts if you'd like. And again, make sure to thank them. So let's see what I have. Just a big hint, if you find a program that you really like and really want to go to, it isn't ideal to contact every faculty member in the department. This kind of comes off as like you're not very genuine or interested in this person's particular research, but rather you're just interested in going to the school. But again, research is a big part of your graduate degree, so that should be one of your priorities. There's also ways to contact advisors. You can go through Google Scholar and like just Google your research interests and then find faculty that way, or you can look on job boards like Texas A&M, and they sometimes have postings for graduate openings or like graduate positions. Okay, and then once you contact, or you can also contact graduate students and past graduate students as well. That's one way to really get to know your PI. All right, so your resume versus a CV. Okay, even though this is a little blurry, you can already see the differences between a resume and a CV. Your resume is very direct and it's very detailed, versus your CV is more of like this, just like record of your academic history and relevant experiences, but you don't really bulletproof or describe any of these experiences. Okay, and then just the key differences between a CV and a resume. So a resume is very short. It can be 1 to 3 pages. It's usually just one. It's specific, so it showcases the most relevant skills and work experience, and it's used to apply to almost nearly any job. While a CV is long, there's often no page limit, but early career should probably keep to like 2 to 3 pages. it's pretty comprehensive. So again, all of your academic positions, publications, any achievements, and you usually use these to apply to academic and scientific jobs. I would advise going to the Career Center to help you really build a resume or a CV. And just go to our UConn Career Center for any kind of opportunities or workshops that they have for these. Okay. So the online application. So online application has like the fun stuff, such as like general information, like that you'll submit your unofficial transcripts and GRE scores if they're required. You'll put in your CV information. You'll want 3 strong letters of recommendation, and then you have your 2 to 3 statements. So your statement of purpose, which is like why you want to go to that program, why you. Your personal statement is like your journey, and then diversity statement is how you will contribute to diversity on that campus. So contacting your letter writers is, you want to do this like at least a month in advance, and you want to provide them with CV or any information that you think is relevant. Hopefully this means that you know someone well and can attest to your professional character. However, not everyone has this privilege of building professional relationships while in undergrad. So in this case, I would explain to the letter writer why you chose them, try to have a meeting with them, and have your CV handy to discuss some of your accomplishments as an undergrad. And don't be afraid to remind your letter writers closer to the deadline, like 1 to 2 weeks. And you can also provide them your statement of purpose to kind of help just have them attest to your character again. Okay, so once you're done, it's really not over just yet. So and from December to January, you'll be waiting to be contacted by your PI. You'll start doing interviews from February to March, virtual and in person. In March is when rejections kind of go out, and then wait lists also go out. And then in April is when universities start accepting students. You'll submit unofficial transcripts and other forms that are required, and then that's when you'll make a decision, and then you'll inform the PI or your advisor about your decisions of whether or not you're going to go. Okay, so that was all of the information. I know it was a lot, so I just wanted to bring this up again. So make sure to sign up for Seeds. There's a QR code, so you can do that quickly. And our next meeting is to be announced, but our topics are going to discuss resources and opportunities, and like how to get involved in undergraduate research. So any questions?
Thanks, Jess. Do you mind keeping your last slide up just for people to grab the QR code? I also threw some links to job boards for jobs and or grad programs, and we'll also send this list, and we'll include Ecolog. Yes, sorry, Fred, forgot about that one, in an email to everyone, so you can keep up to date on what's out there. I also wanted to make one last shout out to a person helping plan the meeting. It was our founding member, Kylie Brown. So thank you, Kylie. Okay, so if we want to go to questions next, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can call on you, and you can speak.
Fred?
Yeah, there were some things. So Jessica, thank you so much. That was a great job. When talking about the steps to applying for graduate school, definitely a lot to take in. For those of you that haven't yet explored the possibilities. But I just wanted to say, so for example, a few little details here and there. So you mentioned the fees, the application fees can be waived at the departments. Also, a lot of institutions are offering open houses, so you get to visit the institution before you actually get to apply. There's an application process for that, but it's actually a funded trip as well as a visit the institution. I think that another extremely important thing to mention, we mentioned about location, you mentioned the institution and the lab research. It is really important. I don't think this is stressed enough around not only for graduate students in general, but also minority graduate students face this more than other groups. The fact of when you pick an advisor, when you pick someone to work in their lab, that decision is literally you're picking a relationship that is going to shape who you are for the future. It is an extremely important relationship. A lot of these relationships might have hiccups, and some of them are normal or considered normal. Others are definitely not. So do your homework, talk to the students who work in that lab, look at students who have left the lab, ask them their reasons. What's the turnover rate? You know, is it a person that's going to be there? Is it a person that's extremely busy and not going to be there? Do they have a lab manager that mostly runs the day-to-day activities, or it's actually them? You know, talking to the students and asking them about their experience so far in their graduate school and considering somebody to work for is extremely important. And I think honestly, at the end of the day, that might be one of the most important like decisions and questions that you can ask folks in the lab, and then make the decision after that. And as far as gap years and careers and so forth, yeah, there's a bunch of like different stories. But yeah, I just wanted to mention those two key points.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Jamie. She wants to know a little bit about how the process has changed and if at all when you're taking a gap year.
So is that two parts, like if the graduate school application has changed, or it's just when you have taken a gap year, if there's any changes because of that? Sorry.
Kind of both. Like I'm hoping to take a gap year in between finishing undergrad and going to grad school. And I was wondering like if the timeline kind of changes or if you need to do anything differently if you're doing a gap year than like if you weren't.
So the timeline doesn't change. Some programs allow you to start in the spring. The only thing I will mention about that is most grants or fellowships or anything, any kind of funding that they'll give you, it's more available in the fall for whatever reason versus the spring semester. So again, these deadlines can vary, but yeah, I would kind of go off of the timeline that I mentioned. I think there's always a benefit to starting early, like in March, and start thinking about these things. So yeah, there shouldn't be any differences. I would try to, like, if you are going to keep a gap or go for a gap year, I would try and keep in contact with whoever you suspect might be a letter writer. Just to create that dialogue and just being like, hey, I'm planning on taking a gap year, but eventually I might want to pursue a graduate degree.
So I'll jump in for a second there because I am taking a gap year. This is my gap year. I graduated last year and I'm applying currently to graduate schools for next year. So right now I'm in the process of writing emails to professors and looking for people I might want to, go and work with. But one of the things I think my suggestion would be to try to look for more research experience within that year, that gap year that you have. Like a lot of PIs and schools look for, okay, you took a gap year, but what did you do with that year? So yeah, if you like look for lab tech positions, I think research experience in your undergraduate is extremely important. They want to know that you can do research. So I think that's my suggestion. But yeah, the timeline is basically the same. Like right now I'm like writing emails to professors. So yeah, it's just a year delayed and you have more time if you're like taking 18 or 16 credits or how many ever you're taking during undergrad.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we'll be talking about opportunities for undergrads as well as recent grads. So if you are thinking about taking a gap year, we could talk about any kind of opportunities during that time frame as well. Thank you.
Another question that we got in our poll is a pretty common question is what does tuition look like? And do you make money as a TA? And are there other ways to reduce costs of tuition?
Tuition. Sorry, I was trying to jot all that down. So tuition is often waived for PhD students in particular, but for masters, sometimes that can vary, and that depends per department and per program. So yeah, tuition is usually waived, and sometimes like UConn, even if you're doing a course-based master's, you can get a TA-ship and still cover, get a stipend as well as cover tuition that way. But I'm not entirely sure how much tuition is at UConn if I didn't have the tuition waiver and the stipend that I'm receiving right now as a master's student. So I'd have to look into that.
All right, thank you. Next question. Are there classes that can be taken now as an undergrad that will help with fulfill requirements as a graduate student?
So there's always relevant courses like, let's say, like biology and things like that. Or let's say there's classes where you take like a biology lab and it's a little more focused on like teaching you how to write a research manuscript or something like that. Like those are always useful classes. But I will kind of stray and just say, like, I was animal sciences when I was an undergrad, and not all of that was directly related to ecology. And you just kind of have to show that, like, there's skills that you pick up and are transferable to every field. And it's kind of just like, I don't think any courses are a waste, I would say. Anything that's like related to your field is pretty relevant, I would consider. I also know like people who are engineers that went into ecology and things like that. So it was a little different.
Okay. So now we're gonna get into some fears.
Okay.
Being to graduate school. So one of the fears, like, it was pretty common as well, is like getting good grades and having a good GPA.
Mm-hmm.
What are some advices that you can give for people who are probably not, like, don't have like 3.0 plus GPA or like the best grades right now?
So that is kind of where I think experience and just kind of like what you're doing on campus and what you're doing to kind of maybe fulfill some of those weaker areas, or just fill in those weaker areas in terms of GPA. Like GPA is important, but like really a well-rounded applicant, that's not going to be your defining factor. I do hear of stories where people go in with like maybe 2.7 or something like that, and they go in kind of on probation. So that's also a thing too. And then you just kind of work your way up from there. But I wouldn't have that deter you too much if you don't have like the best GPA. That's kind of my advice for there. Like just try and gain some experience and show like you're serious, and also maybe even explaining yourself in your personal statement of any kind of challenges. Or like, I know I didn't reach like this academic maturity right away as a first generation college student. Like that was difficult maintaining a GPA really early on. So
my GPA was a 3.0. So, but I worked full time, and there's other things to consider. So
right.
Definitely they're going to be looking at all of you, not just your GPA.
Yeah, my GPA was 3.2. I'm a strong advocate as to graduate school should definitely get rid of GPA and GRE requirements. If you want to know the dirty secret behind that, it's just an easy way for them to scrub off the majority of applicants. So just imagine, right? You're having 200 applications. You don't really have the staff to manage that. And so you're looking to reduce that number to say 40 or 20 students. The easiest way is to just put a number out there and cut everybody below that number. But that is not a substitute for passion, for drive. Some of the best scientists that I know, come from other fields. They come from, underprivileged backgrounds that don't necessarily have the privilege to be able to, be an excellent student and in high school, and then just making it to college was a sacrifice. And then making it, I can say that some of my best success stories in the SEEDS program as a program manager is grabbing the students that has a 1.8 GPA and then seeing that student now as a faculty at a prominent institution, after finishing a PhD and a couple postdocs. These are the things that this is where the future of science should be headed, and not just based off of privilege or access to solid education. And I can give you plenty of examples where solid education is not even a substitute for experience. Many institutions out there with really big names graduate pretty subpar scientists if they just go through the academic side of it and don't have any extracurriculars activities and doesn't have any other research experience or so forth, which is extremely important. I don't know of a single graduate advisor that would ever take a student that hasn't demonstrated the ability to, implement the scientific method or presented their research at a meeting or a poster or anything like that. So just your degree alone is not enough to continue on to graduate school. And if that's the case for you, then you're in for a couple of years of technical jobs and acquiring that research experience before you ever apply.
Adding on to that and kind of going off of like what people are looking for in grad students, I would say that I also don't have the best GPA. I didn't have the best GPA in my undergrad, but I am looking for like these competitive programs, and it's just about, like everyone's saying, having that experience in undergrad, but also reaching out to the PI. And if the PI thinks you have potential and they like you and they want you in your lab, a lot of the times the like committees who are reviewing your application will say, okay, this person has somebody backing them, has somebody who wants them to work with them. So they will like overlook a lot of those. Maybe you don't have the best GRE score, or maybe you don't have the best GPA, but somebody else is backing you and really wants you in their lab. So that's where that experience comes in handy.
I was just going to mention that actually. So
yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
I have something else to add when talking about, people that writing your letters and so forth. This is actually pretty important. As a person who gets to review a lot of these applications, and believe me, if SEEDS directly sponsors about 100 to 120 students a year, that means I'm usually reviewing 500 plus applications a year. And those are the ones that I'm like, considering very seriously. A lot of it has to do with those letters of recommendation, and those letters of recommendations, and too often I see this mistake where the students go to somebody that might be a prominent scientist or recognized at their institution, and that is usually somebody that is extremely busy, and it's hard for them to take the time to actually write a good letter of recommendation, which is a skill in itself. I can tell you that I have seen horrible letters of recommendation for students that really deserve the opportunity. But then when you look at the letter, it's like, oh, this student took this course with me. He got an A. I think he's going to be a great scientist. This is why I recommend him for this experience. And that was it. It was a 5-sentence letter of recommendation. There's no storyline. There's nothing that tells me about the student's personality or its student's passion or anything like that. And I honestly see this way too often. And I always respond to the reviewer like, you should have done a better job, or tell the student that you didn't have the time, because it's something I see every year. So for a letter of recommendation, it doesn't have to be from somebody in academia. It can be from somebody that knows you, a previous boss, a high school mentor, a coach, whatever it is that may be. Just make sure that it's somebody that knows you and knows you for your passion in science. And I can't strain that word enough, because passion does have a lot to do with it when you're like exploring a career. You have to be motivated. You need to know why you're taking that step in your career and actually like go for it. So being able to ask somebody that actually knows you to write that letter might not be, you know, a published scientist, is way better than to have somebody that's extremely busy that won't have the time to write the letter that you deserve. The other thing is be proactive when asking for those letters. Submit them your CV. Let them know what you've been up to. Send them bullet points. Can you please include this and this aspect about me? Here's my statement. Also, send the statement of your application. So they can tie that into your essay, and so the reviewer can then look at your statement, see then read the letter of recommendation and be like, okay, cool. Like this is. They're being truthful. They're telling this story and this is who they are. About the gap year, I would also add, don't worry about that. Again, there's ways where you can word that, which goes back to if you're taking courses, somebody asked a question about what courses to take before you apply to graduate school. Take a writing course, take a communication course, practice those skills. I cannot strain that enough. Being able to word things that, might not be, being able to word things in a way where, you can turn something that might be blind to something that like sounds a lot better. So for example, instead of like, I took a gap year, and being afraid of saying for mental health, it's like I took a gap year to mature and make sure that science is a place for me. And after a year of doing this and this, like, I'm sure that this is what I want to do. I'm willing and eager to dedicate 2 to 3 years of my life for a master's, 5+ years for a PhD of this. That's a big chunk of your life. Consider that. Like when you're making this decision, it's not something that you go into it willy-nilly. This is something that you must want, and it's going to be hard, and the learning curve is steep, but the reward is always there when you get to do something for the rest of your life that is just means everything to you.
I'd like to also add about the gap year. We took a poll in my lab with all the grad students and postdocs, and every single one of us had taken at least a year off before going to grad school. I always advocate for it. I think it's a great opportunity to get more experiences outside of just coursework. But what you do at that time is very important.
So. And that's okay. You can travel, you can you can scrape by, work as a server, be a bartender, whatever it is that you want to do for that gap year. In the end, you get to explore nature and kind of figure out what ecosystem you want to dedicate to. Or if you want to look at other implications of science, I think that ecology, looking at it now into the future, one, there's going to be a lot of remote data sensing and technology involved with it. But also, you're looking at the implication of that science into other fields. Consider that, it's not just about the niche. You're not going to be the expert on this group of animals and this, ecosystem with this like area of the state or continent. Science is going to be about the implication of your research. How does that evolve into social scientists? How can you do involve outreach, and how can you involve economics and business side to ecology? I think that is something that we have struggled for such a long time to actually give the monetary value that we should to our science. And that is why we still to this day struggle for funding compared to other sciences and other resources. It is up to you as the future of this science and as the future of ecology, as the future of the earth. Again, we're not leaving it in such a good, position right now to be able to figure out these things and actually change the way that people view our science. I've always said, and I'm kind of going off topic now, but I've always said it's extremely important. Like ecology to me is the most diverse science. It's a science of interaction and involves everything from single-celled organisms all the way up to Earth's atmosphere as a whole. You will not get a science as diverse as ecology that doesn't exist. So the idea that ecology is literally anything and everything that has to do with interactions, it's up to you on how you want to develop that. And I know for a fact that most of our funders, the National Science Foundation, is always looking for those big ideas. So it might seem far-fetched now, and all of a sudden you find yourself, with a multi-million-dollar grant trying to answer that question.
I'm gonna bring it back to the chat. Someone asked, a few people wanted to know the difference between course-based and research-based. I'm assuming master's degrees or master's degree programs or PhD programs. and maybe just explain a little bit more detail on course base specifically?
Okay, so one great example is here at UConn. It's called the or the BS-MS program, where sometimes you can go and have your master's for just 1 year, or you can still go on for additional years. So basically what a course-based master's is like, you don't necessarily do a research project. You can get involved in research, or an internship usually is required within those programs, but it's just that you are taking more courses that kind of get you, well, at least at UConn, they get you ready for like government jobs and things like that, that you may want to be a part of. And the research part of a master's is, it's called a thesis. So you develop, or a PI can help you, not help you develop, or they can give you a project, or you can develop your own project. And it's kind of like you're becoming an expert within this short amount of time on that specific project. And you also take courses too, and you sometimes you TA. So
It's a lot.
it's a lot. Yeah, it's
I will say about the course-based masters, at least through UConn, is we also place students in internships, or help students get internship opportunities in nonprofits, government, conservation, so on and so forth. And also you do have a research component, but it's not necessarily your own research, but it's learning the process of the scientific method and so on and so forth.
I think you all did a good job at addressing a lot of the fears that people had. One of them that I don't know if anybody will be able to talk about it was language barriers, or when applying for labs or going probably to abroad or anything, sorry, like that, how to like get over, or any advice when applying to labs when there's a language barrier?
That is actually an excellent question. As a Spanish speaker myself, as my first language, anytime I applied for institutions in the US, I had to take the TOEFL. If anybody's heard of that test, it basically measures how well you dominate English. And a lot of schools actually require that, even though, for example, Puerto Ricans are US citizens and it's mostly intended for international students. But since Spanish is our first language, they require it for us as well. That is a challenge in itself. When considering dominating a language or exploring it in the field or whatever. As someone who's bilingual, there's always a challenge. I always joke around that being bilingual means I forget words in both languages. So the idea of that is to take the time. And again, that would very much go back to who you pick to be your advisor. A person that is patient, that is willing to accommodate that student would be key. And this also, again, not just by languages, but by cultures and diversity measures. How would that person feel, at that institution? What has been the history of that institution? When students come from any given background. I can tell you as well firsthand, when being a Black student in a majority white graduate program, there's some challenges that they face that most students don't. And that applies to the same with language barriers. And I have, as you can tell, I have many friends from Puerto Rico that have now, gone on to be amazing scientists, but, they're not fully bilingual, like I've had the fortune to. And so it is a challenge for them to be able, especially again with communicating the science. They might have excellent writing skills in that language, but speaking and standing in front of a large crowd when you don't fully dominate, or don't feel the confidence that you fully dominate the language, even though the subject of your speech. That is the craziest part. You're definitely an expert. You've researched it for years, and yet when you stand up, just because of a language barrier, you feel like just, again, different, or you don't feel you have the same way of expressing yourself. But having somebody there to support that, to like back you up, is extremely important. And again, that goes back to making the decision of who you're going to be working for that extended period of time.
Can I share my experience?
Yeah.
I'm Brazilian. Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm first year PhD student at UConn at the GNU Lab. So I'm Brazilian, and as you may know, here in Brazil, we speak Portuguese. So it was very hard for me to have all my documents translated. It cost me a lot of money to translate. It was a challenge for me to write my personal statement and my diversity statement, as well as translate my CV to English, because English is not my first language. So I took some strategies to help me with the process. One of them is that I took as many as possible contact with English through TV, through Netflix series, music, different online courses, reading papers, reading books, everything that I could do in English, I did. I also took some classes. I was having actually French classes, but my French professor is also an English professor. So we just switched the French to English. But there's a lot of online courses, free courses that you can take in English, like Duolingo, like Babel, or whatever. There's also a center in the UConn, it's UConn Center. They offer a lot of courses to non-English speakers. For example, there's a course on Fridays. I'm volunteering on those courses. There's a different nationality people like speaking with each other in English, trying to help each other to improve their skills. There's also Grammarly. Jessica indicated Grammarly to me, and it saved my life. Like, you can write your stuff there and check on Grammarly if there's some English error, like in your sentence, if you are using a word that doesn't exist, or if you are using a different verbal term that it's not correct for that phrase. So, but the most important thing that I had during my process was the support. I had the support of my family and friends. They read my stuff. They helped me to correct when they could. And when I was like, this is so hard, I can't do it, they cheered me up, you know. They indicated me stuff like videos on YouTube. There's videos. I know that for me, it's a little bit, not easier, but a little bit easier than from other international students who doesn't have the same alphabet that we have. For example, Chinese students, Japanese students, or Korean students. So sometimes they also don't have the same pronunciation that we have. So you can find like videos on YouTube to help you with their pronunciation. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can try to find to help you, but I can assure you that it's not easy and it's harder for you, but never give up. If this is your dream, do not give up. Only losers quit. You have to continue, you have to apply, you have to keep going. Because as Fred said, the way is hard, but I'm pretty sure that in the end you find your reward.
Yeah. And Cindy, I just want to say to you, there is no shame in embracing your culture and the way that you speak with everything. I've always told when I have groups of students, I always ask them, introduce yourself in your, your native tongue. With Native Americans, that's extremely important. And with international students, it's the same. Our cultures have a lot of different sayings that you can't really translate into English, or it doesn't make sense when you try to translate it into English, but it explains, science terms and, just ways that you can't. And so it's, use those when you're presenting, embrace the fact that you're proud and that your language is Portuguese and you're Brazilian and all these things. I ended up working in graduate school with a bunch of Latin American and Brazilian students that ended up at the University of Puerto Rico doing their masters and PhDs. And it was something that we always embraced, we joked around that we're all colonizers by mostly the same European countries. So like we do still have a lot in common in our cultures. But yeah, don't take that again. It can be a barrier if you let it be. But there's definitely resources out there. And again, a good support group really does go a long way. And that is something that I'll use another example. Like I've had so many students from, again, language barriers when applying for our experiences, and we create chapters are actually support groups for that same reason. Like you're part of a SEEDS chapter, use your chapter members. Hey, you guys mind, like there's this experience that has, this deadline. I want, like, can we make a meeting together and like review each other's application materials? Can you review, my CV? Can you review my statement and so forth? So I was very fortunate as well that I had an excellent undergraduate mentor that like pushed me like nobody had ever pushed me before, to like apply for experiences every single semester. It was actually part of his requirements of me being able to work in his lab was, Fred, how many applications are you submitting? And it turned out that it led me to a lot of experiences every single semester of being able to travel outside of Puerto Rico and, do international work and so forth, even as an undergraduate student, because he pushed me to. But also part of that pushing was he reviewing those application materials for me as well, making sure that I wasn't making any mistakes, that my grammar was correct and so forth. And so, again, a big support system is key. And that's actually what chapters are intended to do. It's run by students for students. You guys develop these activities, and I'm so proud to be able to just witness one of these today. So I'm very excited to see what you guys are doing, and it seems like you're doing it right, and that makes me very happy.
Well, I think that is a perfect time to end because it is after 6, so I'm sure people have to get going, but thank you so much, everybody, for coming and giving your input and asking questions. And thank you, Jess and Fred and Esberry, who had to leave, and Jada and just everyone. I'm really proud to be a part of such a great group of amazing people at UConn and through ESA. So our next meeting, again, will be probably within a month, but we'll figure it out and let you know. So thanks again. And I'm recording this just as a reminder, so I'll send out this link to everybody. So,
thank you so much, Sarah. I just want everybody just stay tuned to what we're offering virtually, and I cannot wait to start offering in-person meetings again and see you guys in the application materials and be able to support you in a whole nother way besides the SEEDS chapter and see you guys travel and explore ecology with me. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.